Once again, it is my privilege and pleasure to come and spend these few moments of your time. Every cycle begins and ends at the same place. If you begin a cycle and it returns to the same point and you are in the same attitude, then the cycle will repeat itself over and over again. If one arrives, shall we say, at the beginning again with a new attitude, there is a shift in consciousness which allows a new elevated cycle to begin. Enough for us to begin a conversation.
Thank you, Mercredan, and thanks again for being with us here today. Today, we would like to start off by asking about the Israel-Hamas war. So the world's news are now reporting that this war has killed at least 30,000 Palestinians. Most of them are civilians. So we'd like to know from you, what is the most important things for us to know about the Hamas-Israel war?
The subject, of course, is so emotionally engaging, as if this is the beginning, as if this is the only time this type of extermination has occurred. But it is simply the repeat of the old patterns that began many centuries ago, because the unity was broken into separation, outlined, shall we say, by the gods of many. So every group has its own God, the God of specialness. We are the chosen people, and therefore we have rights above everyone else. We have the right of defense. We have the right to attack for defense. And of course, all of this is against the very teachings that one claims to follow. So you see, the world is watching. As I have said so often, there has been a shift in consciousness, and what used to be hidden beneath what you would call the news blackout, that is, when one listens to news that does not tell the whole story, but that is not happening. Suddenly, the world is aware, and awareness requires a new appreciation. Awareness requires one to review one's internal agreements. And so this activity is not, shall we say, going to uphold the ongoing old world, as it were, the old world order. And so when a new framework is coming into being, the old worlds will, shall we say, come into conflict, and conflicts will break out all over the planet, as is happening. You are simply focusing attention on this particular one because this particular one demonstrates humankind. It demonstrates that humankind has no compassion for anyone else. There is so much, shall we say, attitudes that you think you can justly imprison for one's ideology. And I want to say this, the war in the Middle East has been going on for a long, long time. I want to say the dispossessed and the unwanted from Europe were displaced into the Middle East. And the very displacement into the Middle East has caused a vast displacement of the peoples of the Middle East back into Europe. Now you have an escalating problem. That problem cannot go away simply by more and more of the same. So the world is displaced. And having caused that, there will always be the necessity for a new organization. And so the world has tried and tried again to create an organization to bring about universal justice, international justice, by calling itself united when it is certainly not that at all. So, shall we say, the united world is the world of domination by the rich and powerful, whether that is individuals, whether that is the new corporates, whether that is countries, and so forth and so forth, and on. Even in families, the challenge has been domination and submission. And the submissive come to a point of, shall we say, overreaction. Now you have endless attacks and murders and poverty and all of those things that are simply reflected in what is being shown to occur in this highly volatile position. Does this make sense?
Yeah, it does. Thank you.
And I want to say, so you watch from the outside thinking it does not affect yourself. But when you look at your own countries, and I am going to say every country, dominated by a certain special chosen few. You understand what is happening in the Middle East, in the land of the Palestinians, is exactly that. And even if we take the dangerous ground, the Middle East is the home of the Semitic races. It is not the home of Europeans. Those have another homeland, but they were displaced by ideologies. And now you have to deal with such effects. Every creation comes with its consequences. And if you follow the track back in your historical accounts all the way, digging for the truth, then you will find the conflict began in exactly the same fashion. The beginning, the repetition, and another beginning, another repetition, and onwards it goes. War and conflict. And yet everyone knows that the species itself, that is not even just human species, but every species is at risk from the conflicts that is brought to bear by chosen peoples. So the time of awakening arises, and shall we say, the teachings of the gods is reviewed. Does the teaching say it is fine to attack other people? Is it fine to be at odds with other ideas? To understand what I'm getting at, the planet is awakening, and that conflict is simply a warning for all individuals to consider their conflicts with self and others. For every individual to consider their own self-importance or their own self-victimhood, because every victim will find another way to make someone else the victim of their dissatisfactions. And so it will repeat itself over and over. So the new world order, the new earth as it is said, the new expression, the waking in consciousness, is to recognize the unity of all things, as we have stressed over and over again. Does that answer the question sufficiently?
It does. Thank you. Very insightful.
I want to also add, it is so obvious that people take sides and add their emotional energy to the ongoing structures around them. So every human, shall we say, with every society, every community adds their field of influence into their social orders, into their national framework, into their representational framework, which, if unchallenged, will add, shall we say, to the overall conflict as it escalates and escalates until there is the final conflict. You understand, I have said there are three international wars. First one for property. First one was for who owns the lands and so forth. The beginning of the Middle East began with that. The second war is the war for one's heart, one's emotions, one's that begins with enormous resentments and angers to pay out vengeance. And so the world was brought to its knees from vengeance. And the third one that you are in is the war for your mind. You are being sold all sorts of ideas in order to subjugate and bring back an elevated, chosen few at the expense of unification. In the end, no matter what the physical consequence is, the war for one's mind cannot be won in those terms. That is enough on it.
Thank you. So a lot of what you've talked to us about the Israel-Hamas war conflict, the conflict that stemmed back thousands of years. Obviously we're far more aware of it these days because we don't have the news blackout. And obviously this particular war demonstrates to humankind the lack of compassion that we have. But a lot of it you've talked about stemming back from domination and a submission or domination of a chosen few. So in terms of this war and the third war, the war of the mind, and all of the conflict coming back to domination, what is the answer for us here? What should we be doing about this?
One finds compassion, first of all, by understanding the positions of both sides. In other words, what we have spoken about, and we will, I expect, talk an entire time on this subject. In the beginning, the first, at the end of the first movement, paradox came into being. Two sides that seem at odds, universally important as a unity. And so, shall we say then, to resolve your conflicts is to perceive each side from its side. That is, one begins to recognize that every conflict comes from misunderstanding the other's point of view. And when you can perceive each point of view with respect, what occurs is an elevation. One sees what caused this from the higher point of view. What was the paradox that fell into polarity? You understand? So when one sees each side of a conflict, you understand, shall we take an example that is so relevant? there are many, many examples of firearms being used for random events. You understand? So you see there are children being shot, shall we say, in the schools by a lone perpetrator. So it is obvious the perpetrator is evil and the children are good. Nobody asks, how did the perpetrator become this way? What is occurring in the society that causes harm? Because the perpetrator is the result of harm and therefore causes the society harm. Everything then is in balance. Both sides are harmed, both sides, shall we say, suffer consequences. Do you understand what I mean? Then if the society begins to view, it starts to deal with the inequalities that were always there, ready to be activated. Does this make some sort of sense? And you could look at this in every single way. What is it that causes so many deaths upon the roads? What is it? Because there are those that do not want to obey the rules, as it were. And there are those that want to apply more and more rules to those that do not affect themselves. So then you will have a conflict over applying the rules, and now you will have breaking of them. Now you will have the consequences of it. And one of the consequences is let's not, shall we say, repair the roads. Why bother? Then you have those consequences, and all of this adds up because there is an inequality within the whole system. And until humans begin to understand that, you will end up in constant conflict. Constant conflict means I am right and you are wrong. And I should be able to subjugate you because I am right and you are wrong. Do you understand what I'm getting at? How will that reduce conflict? Conflict comes with uniform justice, proper justice. And when I say that, I am not talking of laws. I am talking of the divine justice that is being brought to bear on all concerned. Humanity is, shall we say, acknowledging divine justice or suffering the consequences of it. Such an important topic.
Yeah, it is. Thank you. Before we go, can you briefly touch on why Israel is such an important place on earth from a spiritual point of view?
Mm. Mm. Shall we say this? It is not. There has an idea perpetrated over a long period of time as if that were the case. But in truth, shall we say, the center of the landmass of this planetary system is located at the Grand Pyramids. So it is in Egypt that is, if anything, the center of civilization. But in the history, as you are told, there was a great conflicting war with the gods of the time. And so was the Exodus. The wandering in the desert, that is, lost, shall we say, not in the physical desert, just lost, until there is, shall we say, a leader that comes forth. The leader, of course, always proclaims, I am the special one. You are the special people. And now let us begin our conflicts. It doesn't matter which God, because they are all wanting to be, shall we call it, top God. Top God. Top dog. You understand, of course. Conflict and its peaceful resolution comes with universal respect for others, compassion and respect. I could even touch on what is the conflict between men and women all over the world. Lack of respect. And if one begins to respect what it is to be one or the other, one begins to understand how to resolve your own conflicts and how to remove your energetic support for conflicting peoples. That is enough for today.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Mercredan, for being here with us again today. And thanks to those that are still here with us viewing this live or in replay. We really, really, really appreciate all the support and the comments. It's very uplifting. So thank you so much for your support. If you did like today's video, please like it. If you haven't already, please subscribe, and we will be back here in 3 days' time, same time as we were today, to talk about the new earth and what changes are in store for us in this new earth that Mercredan talks a lot about. So that'll be very exciting. So I hope you all have a wonderful day or evening wherever you are in the world, and thank you so much. Until next time, bye now.